What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new to my channel, welcome to my channel. My name is Tonibryanne, and in today's video, we're going to be discussing how Sydney Sweeney went from America's It Girl to America's Pick-Me. Superstar actress Sydney Sweeney was once seen as the embodiment of the all-American dream girl. She was labeled as beautiful, vulnerable, sweet, and relatable, and this was mainly due to her breakout roles in the hit series Euphoria and The White Lotus. She quickly became one of Gen Z's new favorite stars and one of Hollywood's ultimate sweethearts. But in just a few short years, that narrative quickly began to unravel. From what seems to be back-to-back scandals, cringy acting gigs, and to her ultimately giving her fans huge secondhand embarrassment, her public image started to shift. Sydney quickly went from being America's It Girl to a pick-me. Her character on and off screen always seemed to be appealing to men when the large majority of her audience at one point was young girls. A lot of fans believed Sydney was oversexualizing herself in order to stay relevant. So how exactly did Sydney get here? And how did her most recent scandal become the biggest reason why people think she is ultimately a pick-me? Well, we're going to be uncovering this all in today's video. But as always, as y'all know, I like to start with a little bit of positivity, so let's first start off with the quote of the day. Today's quote of the day is, "I am worthy of a life filled with success." Today's verse of the day is James chapter 4, verse 17, and it reads, "If anyone then knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is sin for them." If you guys are not following me on any of my social media platforms, my name is tonibryanne TV across Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, of course. So you better make sure you're subscribed. And of course, make sure you're subscribed to my channel. We are on the road to 300,000 subscribers. So don't be late to the game when we hit 300K and we get that major giveaway. Also, Tonibryanne TV is officially a podcast, so I am available on all audio streaming platforms. That is Spotify, Audible, Apple Podcasts. You guys can listen to me wherever you are and however you want to. Link to that will be down below as well. And of course, please be sure to check out my other podcast, The Decision Podcast. That is available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts as well. And if you are interested in being a guest, the Google form is on every single video and it'll be linked down below here. The Decision Podcast is all about how one choice can impact your entire life. And I'm telling you, you guys would love to hear those stories. They're some of the most impactful stories you'll ever hear. And yeah, I think that is all the housekeeping things we need to do. So now let's get into how Sydney Sweeney went from America's sweetheart to America's pick-me. Taking you in this moment. In order for us to understand how Sydney Sweeney literally demolished her entire character, we have to start from the very beginning. Sydney was born on September 12, 1997 in Spokane, Washington. And what's really interesting about Sydney's rise to fame is that it was really rooted in a lot of ambition, hard work, and determination, and it did not happen to her overnight. So though Sydney was born in Spokane, Washington, she mainly grew up in a rural lakeside town in northern Idaho. Her family was known to be very traditional and conservative, along with deeply religious. Sydney's mom was a former criminal defense lawyer, and her father worked in hospitality. So she wasn't born in this industry, she literally worked her way into it. As a kid, Sydney was a total overachiever. She was in soccer, baseball, skiing, waterboarding, literally every sport her school offered. She was even on the robotics team and her math club, and ultimately was valedictorian in high school. She wasn't just a pretty face, she was actually very smart and multifaceted. And when she told her parents she wanted to pursue acting, she gave them a 5-year business plan as to how she was going to achieve that goal.
When I was 12 years old, I was like 12 or 13, I created a 5-year business plan presentation of what could happen if they let me start auditioning for movies. Because I was like, how can I communicate to them on a level that they'll take me seriously and they'll understand? They looked at it as just a dream, a fairy tale, wanting to be a princess. Like, it wasn't something that was tangible.
And I guess she did a pretty good job convincing them, because she quickly moved to LA after giving them that presentation. And she almost immediately started booking work in Portland and Seattle before ultimately moving into television. From 2009 to 2018, she appeared in shows like Criminal Minds, Grey's Anatomy, Pretty Little Liars, and 90210. She had small parts, but they were very consistent, and honestly, I think she did a pretty good job in a lot of her roles. Then came her breakout role in 2 different series in 2018. She was on Everything Sucks on Netflix and Sharp Objects on HBO. In Sharp Objects, she played Alice, a teen in a psychiatric hospital who struggles with self-harm. Her role was ultimately supposed to be small, but the director was very impressed by Sydney's acting skills, so he ultimately kept bringing her back for more scenes. Then came her role as Eden in the hit series The Handmaid's Tale. She also appeared in Under the Silver Lake, Along Came the Devil, Clementine, Big Time Adolescence, and even Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, before she ultimately landed her breakout role in the hit series Euphoria. In 2019, Sydney became very popular for playing Cassie in the hit series. The show became HBO's second most watched series, and Sydney's performance as a teenager with deep emotional trauma and a reputation for promiscuity was praised, and she even received an Emmy nomination for her role as Cassie in Euphoria. Then came her role on the HBO series The White Lotus. This role was way different than her role as Cassie in Euphoria. Her character Olivia that she played on in The White Lotus was known to be mean-spirited, condescending, and kind of stoic. And again, Sydney delivered on this role. Her transition from emotional Cassie to sarcastic Olivia was well done. It showed she had a ton of range, something that is not common today in New Hollywood. And from there, her it girl status skyrocketed. She was suddenly on what seemed to be every single red carpet. She was the cover of fashion magazines. She was getting so many brand deals and was making viral makeup tutorials. Her relatability in interviews, paired with her good looks, made her feel like the ultimate full package. People wanted to see her win. She was literally America's sweetheart. Very quickly, Sydney launched her own production company called 50/50 Films. She was starring in movies and TV shows that showed her range as an actress, and she continued to be praised as one of the most promising young actresses in the industry. And she was even named to Time's 100 Next list and Forbes 30 Under 30. The parasocial relationship her fans had with her was incredibly strong at this point. TikToks about her interviews went viral. Tweets about her being the dream girl went viral, and she became a part of internet culture that felt authentic and natural. But I'm sure, as y'all all know, the internet loves a good rise, but they definitely love a good fall a lot more. So once again, how did Sydney go from being on this high to facing so much backlash in such a short period of time? And the right answer to that would be when she started overtly sexualizing herself, and no longer in an artistic manner. So the moment Sydney stepped into the spotlight, it went from, oh my god, she's so talented, to oh my god, look at her body. Sydney has a very nice body, okay? Mainly known for her having a larger chest, and a lot of people love that about her. And a big reason why she got so much attention about her chest is that a lot of the roles she played in these movies and TV shows, she was nude in. So this led for many articles, interviews, and tweets to less focus on the artistry of her work and more on how big her chest was or how nice her physique was. So as I stated, Sydney appeared in many projects where she was nude on screen, and this largely sparked discussion on the male gaze, character expression, and why and when is nudity needed in order to make a project exemplary. So let's talk about a few of the shows that Sydney was nude in. So number one was Euphoria. That is Sydney's major breakout role where a lot of you, including myself, probably know her from. Her playing the character Cassie. Cassie Howard was in multiple nude scenes just due to the messiness of her character. She was overtly sexualizing herself and used her body as a way to keep a man. So the most notable scenes probably was her when she was riding on the carousel, when she was like grinding on top of it. There was a scene with a very intense bathroom hookup and a few other very emotionally charged sexual hookup scenes. And Sydney described these scenes as imperative to her character Cassie, saying this in quote, "She doesn't know how to communicate without showing her body," end quote. So with Sydney saying this, she's saying that nudity was used in order to convey emotional depth.
Cassie's father left when she was growing up, and she lost this man that she looked at as a superhero, and so she's always looked for that kind of love to replace. And Cassie feels like she needs these men to tell her she's beautiful or make her feel like she has to to accept herself.
Another project that she did, the movie The Voyeurs, which came out in 2021. In the erotic thriller, Sydney plays a character named Pippa, a woman whose sexuality is central to the plot. The film features several explicit sexual scenes, mainly depicting voyeurism, intimacy, and obsession. Sydney has discussed the emotional detachment she has when filming scenes like this, and she said that she even questioned if she did do too much when shooting these scenes. After The Voyeurs came out, a year later in 2022, Sydney spoke candidly about how she felt as if her sex scenes overshadowed her role in Euphoria. She said this in quote, "I'm very proud of my work in Euphoria, but no one talks about it because I got naked," end quote. She highlighted the double standard, saying that men get praised for doing this kind of work, whereas women get judged for it. But to me, and many others, it was a bit confusing because you say this about Euphoria, but then you went on ahead and went and shot The Voyeurs, which was basically you being a very sexualized character throughout the entire film. So it just was generally confusing to people that she went from complaining that she felt as if nudity overpowered her role as Cassie in Euphoria to then going ahead and filming a movie where it's all about sex and erotic things. So it's like the roles you keep choosing to take doesn't distance you from the narrative of being a sexual being. And on top of that, she also talked about being uncomfortable with how much attention her chest was getting. But then she went on ahead and filmed another movie where nudity was displayed, including her chest, that she said that she was tired of getting just sole attention on. So it didn't distance her from the narrative of being a sexual being, and honestly pushed it further. This ad is brought to you by BetterHelp. Hey y'all, quick little break before we get back into today's video. One thing that really stood out to me while researching, filming, and editing this video is the amount of pressure women face, especially those in the public eye. Constantly having to wonder how to stay marketable, how to stay relevant, and constantly needing to prove yourself. This is not just social pressure, it is work stress. And honestly, even outside of Hollywood, I think we all can relate. Trying to navigate your career while constantly being judged, feeling misunderstood, being stretched way too thin. All of this can take a wear on your mental health. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, burnt out, or like you're just carrying too much, therapy can be very helpful. That's why I'm really grateful to partner with BetterHelp in today's video. BetterHelp is entirely online, so it's convenient, flexible, and will work perfectly for you, especially if you're juggling work, side projects, and just trying to stay afloat in your day-to-day life. You'll be matched with a licensed therapist that fits your needs, and you can switch therapists at any time with no extra charge. You don't have to wait until you're at a breaking point. Talking to someone who actually gets it can really help you navigate that pressure at work, at home, or anywhere in between. If you've been thinking about therapy, here's your sign to start today. Visit betterhelp.com/tonibryanne to get 10% off your first month. That's BETTERHELP.com/tonibryanne. Take care of yourself. You deserve support too. So now let's get into further contradictory behaviors that Sydney was doing that further pushed that she was really for the male gaze versus being for what she really was good at, acting. So in March 2024, Sydney Sweeney was an SNL guest. So instead of pushing against the stereotype that she felt that so many people thought of her as, she decided to go ahead and fit right into it actually. So in her SNL performance, she was playing a ditzy blonde doing jumping jacks for attention. Was it funny? Maybe. But for many, it felt like she was feeding into the one thing she claimed to dislike so much, being for the male gaze. And many fans began giving her the side eye, saying things like this in quote, "If it weren't for her boobs, I don't think we'd even hear about Sydney. And that's what I find annoying. At least focus on someone hot with real talent." Another social media user said this, "Personally, I just found it contradictory that she went on a whole rant during interviews about how she was being sexualized and didn't want to be known for one thing, that her body doesn't define her as an actress, and then actively sexualizes herself and markets her boobs first. As a general point, I don't really like that we're marketing objects via a woman's body. That just comes across as degrading to me, but it's a personal opinion." So though Sydney said that she didn't want to be labeled for her body, just 3 years later, she switched up her thoughts completely. In a June 2025 W magazine interview, Sydney said this in quote, "I don't get nervous. I gained so much confidence and self-awareness." And she was saying this when she was discussing playing the role as Cassie in the hit series Euphoria, where Cassie is nude in a lot of scenes. She also said this in quote in that same interview, "I think think that the female body is a very powerful thing. I owe it to the character to tell it well and do what needs to be done." End quote. But she also went on to emphasize that her being naked wasn't intimidating to her. It actually gave her some confidence because it was a challenge. And this was very interesting because just a few years prior, she said that she did not like the fact that she was just known for her body, and she actually chose to lessen the amount of nude scenes that was in Euphoria.
Sydney Sweeney asked for some of her topless scenes in Euphoria to be removed. If you've seen Euphoria, then you'll know that Sydney Sweeney's character Cassie has had quite a few explicit scenes. And she said that the script for season 2 contained more topless scenes than she was comfortable with. So she spoke with the director, Sam Levinson, to get some of these excess scenes removed. She also specified that Sam never pushed her to be in a scene that she wasn't comfortable in. But she told him when a scene contained unnecessary nudity and didn't add anything to the character or plot. She also pointed out that there's a stigma between male and female actresses when it comes to nudity, and that while men are applauded, much of her work has been discredited.
What's interesting is that Sydney's entire perspective on nudity changed so quickly. Now she's saying that filming nude scenes doesn't make her nervous and it's all about female empowerment and that she embraces being nude. And look, I get it. People grow, people change, our perspectives can change on things as well, and we can gain more confidence within ourselves. But the timing of this switch is very hard to ignore because right around the time she made this switch, Sydney was all over our TV screens filming all types of commercials that was obviously objectifying her as a woman.
You can take the dude out of the country. You can't take the country out of the dude. Wish you were here.
Sydney Sweeney. Body wash.
Let's face it, guys only want one thing.
Wish I had something natural instead of this synthetic body wash. Sydney Sweeney, body wash genie?
Dr. Squatch Natural Body Wash for Men. They're tired of smelling thirsty.
Sydney Sweeney. Holy coconuts, it even smells natural.
And it's moisturizing. At the end of the day, they just want to crack open a natural one with the boys.
Sydney Sweeney, body wash genie.
Dr. Squatch Body Wash. For men who prefer natural.
And it really makes you wonder, is this all about her evolving as a woman? Or was this the kind of rebrand that only happens when a fat check is in front of your face? Because to me, it doesn't feel like Sydney stopped being uncomfortable. It feels like someone on her team told her that sex sells, and if you want those big checks, you're gonna have to sell your sexuality because that's what people think of you as. So as her public image evolved, Sydney began leaning into a very particular archetype. That archetype being the pick-me archetype. She started appearing in interviews saying things like, "I work on cars," or "boys didn't like me in school." These statements felt very crafted to appease men. She framed herself as low maintenance and not like the other girls. And her fans started noticing this.
I'm such a country dude. I like to have an engine wherever I go. I'm such a country dude. I taught my guy friends how to change a tire. I'm such a country dude. I wear overalls more than dresses.
Now, the issue isn't about her liking to work on cars or wanting to be a low maintenance woman. The issue is the framing of things. It's almost as if these things are meant to make her appear as more valuable, different, and separates her from other women. It's literally the classic pick-me strategy. Position yourself to be different in order to be desirable to the man. And this showed up in her acting choices too. We have been seeing Sydney in more commercials than we've seen her in TV shows and movies recently. And a lot of the commercials she's in is definitely feeding into the male gaze archetype. The roles she's playing are sexy, desirable, and once again, dependent on male validation. And nothing challenged that narrative. And then came the bath soap ad. Between May and June 2025, Sydney teamed up with men's grooming brand Dr. Squatch to launch a limited edition soap called Sydney's Bathwater Bliss. And just like what the soap was called, it was meant to emulate or at least be advertised to be Sydney Sweeney's literal bathwater. Only 5,000 bars were made and they were being sold at $8 per soap bar. In the commercial, Sydney's very soft-spoken. She's clearly naked in a bathtub. I mean, that is her bathwater in that soap apparently. At least that's what they're trying to say to men. And she's saying, "Hey, dirty boys." Just her tone in general was very much so given that she was trying to validate men. Take a look at this.
Hello, you dirty little boys. Are you interested in my body? Wash? Well, you can't have it. Because this isn't for boys, it's for men.
And hey, it must have worked because the soap sold out instantly. On top of it being sold out instantly, the demand was so freaking high that people were reselling it on eBay. And not just for the $8 it was listed at, no, for hundreds and thousands of dollars. And people were actually bidding to get their hands on Sydney Sweeney's bathwater soap. Now, you guys can look at this stunt as not being inherently problematic, okay? I know some people might look at it as, hey, if the men want it and they're willing to pay for it, give it to them because you're getting something out of it, which is money. But it literally reinforces the same exact pick-me ideology that she once was so against. You had critics calling it OnlyFans level of marketing, and people all over the internet giving think pieces as to why they believe that Sydney is behaving the way she is, calling her a pick-me, saying she's seeking male validation, saying her funds are running low, and saying how she further is pushing women 10 steps backwards.
I don't know if Sydney Sweeney is in massive gambling debt or perhaps has forgotten she's still in the prime of her career, but this is one of the most baffling grifts I've ever seen in my life, especially when you consider the way she's talked about her own career in recent years. She starts by saying the largest problem here is that the market for this soap should not exist. If you are buying this, whether it be ironically or not, I find that to be truly embarrassing. I think the argument can be made that this is empowering. She's going to be objectified anyway, so why not make a buck off it? But I think at the same time, this is lazy, it's exploitative of parasocial weirdos, and does not frame Sydney Sweeney in the way that she wants to be framed by her own admission. But time and time again over the past 3-4 years about the role she's been given and the way she's been typecasted. Quote, Cassie is a sexualized character and that became a mold that was then forced onto me as a human instead of just Cassie. But I look very different in everything I do because I want to become the character individually. I don't want people to associate Sydney Sweeney with a character. I want them to feel like they're fully experiencing another world and another person. See, this continues the development of a personal brand that I don't think is the personal brand she's actually trying to build. I've said this for 2 years. I think her best role is Reality. It came back in 2023. It has nothing to do with her looks or objectifying her. It has to do with the character. And she did something different. It's a great performance. This stands out from the rest of her work. Also had Immaculate last year, a movie she poured a lot of her own time and money into. I thought this was wonderful. I preferred it to The First Omen last year, despite the fact they had so many similarities. I think the career is still going to move forward in the direction that she wants. She has enough money now to do that. The Christy Martin biopic is coming up. I think that could be really good. I know I'm not beating the hates fun allegations, but to me, this is just baffling, brain-rotted, lowest common denominator bullshit.
What was originally supposed to be a joke, according to Sydney, turned into an instant viral product. But it definitely blurred the lines between performance and persona. It reinforced the narrative that Sydney's body is her brand legitimately, and it showed that her brand directly feeds into the male gaze once again.
We also have to ask you about your Dr. Squatch. And everyone is talking about. Tell me about that partnership.
I think that it's more fun to see everybody else talk about it.
How did that creative concept come to be?
I pitched it.
But there's been a backlash, of course, being like, this is gross marketing ethics. You're just basically over-sexualizing a young woman who's already been over-sexualized, and you're profiting off the male gaze, and people being gross about wanting to just like have.
I mean, it is gross. Like, the whole thing is generally disgusting, but to me, it's kind of funny and acceptable if Sydney Sweeney is in on it and
Exactly.
masterminding the whole thing.
And I think because there is this constant narrative about Sydney Sweeney objectifying herself, like people always criticize her on her Instagram for, you know, having all these makeup brand partnerships where she's got her that whatever. And it's like, no, she's just in on the joke. She's just monetizing the male gaze and making the pervs work for her.
Now let's talk about the MAGA birthday party she had with her family, and this was actually before the soap incident. So Sydney posted pictures celebrating her mother's 60th birthday party. And this should be a very happy, beautiful moment. You know, you're seeing pictures, you're celebrating your mom's 60th year old life. It seems nice, innocent pictures to drop online. However, fans and other critics quickly noticed some odd things about this said party. Many of the guests and family members at Sydney's mother's birthday party were wearing MAGA hats and also were waving Blue Lives Matter flags. Fans were stunned, okay? The imagery was very much so political and seemed almost intentional. And it shocked people that Sydney was probably most likely very conservative. Now, of course, she got called out for this all over Instagram, all over TikTok. Everybody was talking about it. But instead of addressing her fans' concerns, Sydney said this in quote, "You guys, this is wild. An innocent celebration from my mom's milestone 60th birthday has turned into an absurd political statement, which was not the intention. Please stop making assumptions. Much love to everyone, and happy birthday, Mom. End quote. And that was the problem, though. It was very political in the eyes of her fans who looked different than her. Her fans that didn't have blonde hair and blue eyes. Her fans that were part of the LGBTQ plus community. Her fans that were of color. Her fans that were women. Her fans that dealt with police brutality. It felt incredibly dismissive. That in itself really made the America's sweetheart image really shatter, and it allowed people to see more in Sydney's pick-me behaviors. Her dismissal to the reaction of her fans felt very privileged. But me, myself, and I'm not really shocked by this. Sydney grew up in a very rural area where her family was deeply religious, deeply conservative, and of course, white. So I'm not shocked that these are her political beliefs, okay? I'm not shocked at all. But in terms of her leaning more into the male gaze throughout her career, where she's always sexy, always submissive, and always curated to appeal to a man, it starts to look less like PR and more like this is just who she is to her core. Because if you've ever been around conservative culture or adjacent to very extreme MAGA individuals, you know that women are taught to find their power through their desirability in a man. So Sydney selling herself as this sexy, docile, soft-spoken, cool girl, the one who doesn't challenge men, the one who makes men feel seen, may not just be branding. It may just be what she was taught all of her life. And child, that recent American Eagle ad did not help her anymore. And before we even get into the political aspect of this ad, it was honestly her once again over-sexualizing herself. She was being incredibly soft-spoken, putting her jeans on, trying to sound sexy, talking about how good she looks. It was further fitting into the idea that Sydney is mainly for the male audience. So now let's get into the political aspect of things. So in the commercial, Sydney speaks about her American genes. American genes spelled as G-E-N-E. And she was doing this while flaunting her blonde hair and her blue eyes. The whole concept was to be a play on the word jeans versus jeans. Like jeans, like your cute jeans, J-E-A-N-S. Did I spell that right? J-E-A-N-S, yes. Versus genes like your DNA, G-E-N-E-S. So that combined with the visual messaging, it gave off very unsettling eugenic vibes.
Genes are passed down from parents to offspring, often determining traits like hair color, personality, and even eye color. My genes are blue.
Sydney Sweeney has great genes.
In a time where audiences are increasingly being more critical of what marketing teams are putting out there, especially when it comes to racial and cultural undertones, because of the climate of the world right now and how problematic the world is right now, everything has a little meaning in it. I don't care what y'all say. Every piece of clothing you're wearing, every magazine article you see, every cover page, every billboard, every TV show you watch, when brands say something wasn't intentional, it was intentional. I don't care what anyone says. This commercial came off as very tone deaf and honestly exclusionary. And once again, her using her soft voice to try and sound sexy and be aesthetic did everything but that. It was very clear that the entire concept of her being sexy and even nostalgic was rooted in a type of femininity that's patriotic, docile, and whitewashed. Almost like we want to go back to the way things used to be. Let's go back to the Jim Crow era. The way she was posed, the tone of her delivery, it all felt like an attempt to be the dream girl, or what America should deem as the dream girl. It didn't feel in the slightest progressive or powerful. It felt very pick-me, and like I said, very Jim Crow era.
I am not interested in acting shocked, dumbfounded, offended by performances of whiteness. Like, in my opinion, sometimes asking questions with very obvious answers is a waste of time. So is Sydney Sweeney a racist? Well, yes. We've known this since meeting her entire conservative family on social media years ago, in which they had a party where people were wearing Blue Lives Matter t-shirts as well as MAGA-style caps. In my opinion, yes, it does take a racist to read the script that American Eagle had and recognize that there's a double entendre being made between genes like the fabric and genes like the genetic code passed down from your ancestors in order to highlight that brand as a colonial heritage brand. If you do need more context, the blue blood double entendre that American Eagle's having Sydney Sweeney use in that commercial is literally riffing off of Blue Blood. This is an undeniably racist and classist ideology that is used by aristocratic families who are inbred purebred that need to justify their superiority complex. I'm emphasizing colonial heritage brand because it's not an American heritage brand because it's not indigenous. I don't think indigenous people would make shackle bracelets that look like they came straight out of fucking slavery. And American Eagle is just one of the unholy trifecta of brands, outlets that do this colonial heritage bullshit, because Abercrombie & Fitch is right there, and Hollister has famously had an issue with this since its inception. Like, yes, she's racist. That's why she's the perfect ambassador for the brand.
Whether it was intentional or not, but like I said, I feel like everything has little undertones of racism and colorism and every ism that exists. The American Eagle ad further reinforced the idea that Sydney is boxed in and she doesn't care to challenge herself more. She's not pushing boundaries. She's just slipping into a mold that's already been carved out for her and literally marketed to men for generations.
And I've never said this about a woman before, but the backlash that this woman receives is entirely self-inflicted and I believe intentional at this point. And she fully had the potential opportunity to do a Margot Robbie and see that she was catering to the wrong audience and shift gears, but I think with this new American Eagle ad controversy, she has destroyed any chance she has at that.
Sydney's not the first Hollywood star that this happened to. This happened to Megan Fox. At least for a decade, Megan was deemed as the hottest woman alive. And yeah, she was freaking beautiful. The girl was stunning. But due to this, she was typically typecasted to always fit into the sexy role and wasn't allowed to further her acting skills. I feel like a lot of people casted her just to be eye candy. But when Megan ultimately did speak about her mistreatment and the over-sexualization of her as a person and as an actress, she was immediately blackballed. Think about that era where we did not see Megan for a while. I think Megan came out of nowhere again in like 2021, but we did not see Megan Fox really anywhere. She wasn't in any movies. She wasn't in any TV shows. She literally just disappeared. She went from being one of the most talked about women to being a has-been in a matter of seconds, it felt like. Jessica Alba, she even said she felt this way. In her role of Fantastic Four, she felt like she was always overly sexualized and was always having to film in her bra and panties. She felt like her body was highlighted more than her actual acting skills, and that led her to kind of fall back and begin her entrepreneurship journey, where she is now the founder and owner of the diaper bag company, Honest. I think she expanded past diapers, but she was like, I can't do this anymore either. And even Amber Heard, whether you guys like her or not, Amber was constantly boxed into bombshell roles that limited her capabilities of being an actress.
Because hear me out, she had the potential to choose the Margot Robbie path, which would have aged her career beautifully, right? Because Margot Robbie started around like Wolf of Wall Street era, and she very much so was catered to the male gaze, which is a similar thing that happened with Sydney Sweeney, right? And then Margot Robbie appeared as a human being to men for the first time, and they all turned on her and started calling her mid. Again, just like a year ago, how Sydney Sweeney had those bikini photos leaked in which she just looks like a regular person who wasn't photoshopped, and men across the internet started turning on her and calling her mid as well. And that's when I defended her, right? Because she didn't deserve that. No woman deserves that. But that is the moment, just like Margot Robbie, when she should have realized that she needs to shift the audience that she caters to, or else she's going to continue to get attacked every time she appears as a human or begins to age. Margot Robbie did the smart thing, and she started catering her audience to women and female empowerment and equality. Her brain finally fully developed in her mid to late 20s, and she realized that she needed to stop catering to men. Sydney Sweeney did not have the same realization. Instead, she doubled down. She came crawling back to the males, and she started selling them that soap with a weird hole in the middle, which again was an obvious attempt at rage baiting, but I didn't really care about that because, I mean, just sell soap. I don't know. If men are willing to buy it, take their money. But now she's released these Yahtzee propaganda American Eagle ads that are very obviously catering to red hat males, which doesn't make sense because she's wearing women's jeans in them. It's obvious what those videos were doing, what those videos were meant for, and who the audience was supposed to be. The issue is she didn't learn her lesson the first time. Eventually, that audience is going to find a reason to turn on her again. And guess what? We aren't really going to be here for you anymore, waiting to support you on your downfall.
And I'm curious if Sydney is going to do the same thing that these other women did, like Megan Fox and Jessica Alba. Is she going to decide to step outside the spotlight in order to gain back a little bit of her dignity? Or is she okay with feeding into this narrative? Because there are so many commercials that she's in. Like I said, I don't even see her in movies and TV shows anymore. And it leads me to think and question, is Sydney doing this as a quick money grab before she makes a safe exit? Or does she feel the pressure from her team to continue making these projects? The world may never know, but we do know indeed that Sydney Sweeney fell from America's sweetheart to America's pick-me. And all we can hope she does is take a step from her brand deals, fire or reconstruct her PR team, or lean into more roles that show her full acting capabilities. Because I will say, Sydney is a pretty good actress when she has more range. And though I do not believe Sydney is old in the slightest, but she is almost 28 years old. And I promise you, Hollywood will just simply move on and hop onto the next bombshell that comes about. So she can either exit with her poise or just continuing to fall into being America's pick-me. All right, you guys, so that is the end of today's video. I, of course, want to know what you guys think in the comments down below. What are y'all thoughts on Sydney Sweeney being labeled as America's pick-me? Do you guys agree with this? Do you disagree with it? Let's get the discussion going on in the comments down below. Remember, y'all, we are on the road to 300,000 subscribers, so please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Thank you all for your endless love and support. If you support me, I love you endlessly. And yeah, follow me on my social media platforms, follow Toni Bryanne TV, the podcast, and follow The Decision, the podcast. And remember to stay beautiful and blessed, and I will see you all in my very next video. Love you guys. Bye. Mwah.
Taking you in this moment, come get close like you own it. Read your aura.